Hello everyone, and welcome back to another look at weapon popularity in Monster Underworld. Of course, it's going to be a little different this time, because Iceborne launched, which means we get to ask all kinds of interesting questions. For example, how does not having all the skills affect which weapons you choose? Do you prefer to have the greatsword versus the bow? The bow is a very expensive weapon to build for. The greatsword is a very cheap weapon to build for. So is hammer, so is longsword, so is switch axe, right? So we get to see if any of the weapons have shifted according to what you might predict them to shift for when a game like this launches, as opposed to where it should be in the end game. Also, it might reflect how people are feeling about the weapon changes. So all the weapons have new moves, so the longsword has really cool moves, and we don't expect the longsword to drop. But the hunting horn also has really cool moves, and we expect the hunting horn to shift upwards because it's had some major improvements. One weapon that has not received major improvements, in my opinion, is the lance. The lance gets the counter claw, but that's about it. You don't really see too many other changes. Whereas another weapon, the gun lance, had some pretty major changes with how the worm stake works. You have something that's been dubbed the slinger stake. That's the new, you load the slinger stake with pods, and then it sticks into the monster, and when you attack it with one of your shelling explosive moves, you get bonus damage. It blows up twice. So how did that affect the gun lance? Did the gun lance shift up at all? So these are all the terrific questions we get to ask as we break down the numbers. Get comfortable. Let's get started with the PlayStation 4 weapon popularity. Alright, here are the numbers. On the left, you can see the stats from July. On the right, you can see the new stats from September. The number one thing that stands out to me in this list is that not very much has changed. And this doesn't really surprise me because I've been doing this for so long. Really, it's very gradual changes, guys. It would just be like one or two weapons will shift around, and usually just by a point or two, usually a population point or two, and that's exactly what we see here. If you jump your eyes to the very bottom of the list, you can see that in 14th place, the hunting horn used to have 1% of the population. It now has 2% of the population. Oh my, it is really nice though. It does mean that the hunting horn changes might be affecting the hunting horn. We'll have to see if it continues to go up. It's not uncommon for the hunting horn to shift between 1 and 2 from time to time. What would really surprise me is if hunting horn reached 3% usage. Now, as we know, when a weapon moves up in popularity, it can only do this as another weapon moves down, and that's true for the percentage of people using it as well. So hunting horn now has 2% of the population. Who lost some of the population? That would be the heavy bowgun. So am I surprised that the heavy bowgun shifted down? I am not. Hunting horn received really interesting buffs and improvements. Heavy bowgun, it's not that it's really changed, but we have seen a big nerf to the cluster bombs. Okay, so the cluster bombs are working very different. It's kind of a combination of things. It's a nerf to the temporal mantle. So it turns out cluster bombs, they were already pretty strong on their own, but what made them crazy is that you could put the temporal mantle on and go through all your cluster bombs. Can't really do that anymore. You're kind of a sitting duck when you cluster bomb, and the temporal mantle is only going to flip a few times and then it's going to be dead. So heavy bowgun usage is down, and that's what you would probably predict for the heavy bowgun. Not to mention, when you're starting a new story mode and you don't have any of the endgame weapons crafted, heavy bowgun is one of the harder weapons to kind of account for because it's one of the more complicated weapons, and I feel like it's really one of those weapons that ramps up in the end game when you really figure out all the heavy bowguns. Well, people probably just said, you know what, I just want to play with the smashy smash weapon. I am not at all surprised that the hunting horn has gone up, even if just by a little bit. And by the way, we'll be covering lots of heavy bowgun builds, and we'll be covering lots of hunting horn builds in the future. I do love hunting horn. I love all the weapons. Next up, let's talk about weapon popularity changes on the Xbox. So we've got this July information on the left again, and the September information on the right. Longsword's the same, insect glaive's the same, dual blade's the same, but what's this? The bow has fallen from 4th place all the way down to 6th place. Now that doesn't seem like a lot, but in my opinion it is. Let me explain what's going on here. So you're all gamers. You should understand kill-death ratio and have some experience with it. Have you ever played a shooter game and you had a kill-death ratio of 2.0 and it looked really good, and then you died a few times and it dramatically changed to like a 1.1 or 1.2? What happened there? What happened is you didn't have a lot of kills, so when you died a few times, your kill-death ratio shifted very easily. So for example, let's say you killed 2 people and you died 1 time. That's a terrific looking kill-death ratio because it's a 2.0. You've killed 2 people and you died once. But what happens if you were to die 1 more time? You'd have a 2/2 or a 1.0 kill-death ratio. So suddenly you've gone from this awesome looking 2.0 kill-death ratio to an awful looking 1.0 kill-death ratio, and all you had to do to change that number was to die 1 more time. All right, so 2 over 1, when it becomes 2 over 2, is really bad really fast. But let's say you had 2 million kills in your video game, and then 1 million deaths, right? And you died one more time. Would that affect your kill death ratio? Not at all. In fact, you would have to die like 500,000 times to make a dramatic impact on your kill death ratio. Well, I believe the weapon popularity is working exactly the same way. The numbers are very large, I suspect, and when players shift over to one weapon or to another weapon, it really doesn't affect their weapon popularity too much unless there's a huge migration from one weapon to the other. So on the PlayStation 4, we saw that the hunting horn population shifted from 1% to 2%. The reality is that ratio, because it's in ratio to all the other weapons, that ratio could represent a very large shift between heavy bowguns and hunting horns. We're not allowed to see the actual total population, so we don't actually know how large the numbers are. You have to see how many people are actually using the hunting horn and how large the total population of people using weapons is in order to understand this, right? We just don't know it. The only thing we get is the final calculation, the percentage, right? That's the only thing we see. So over here on the Xbox, we see that the bow has fallen from 4th place with 12% of the population to 6th place with 11% of the population, and it looks like a very small change. But the reality, the numbers behind it could be quite large, and when you think about the fact that this is Capcom's best-selling game and that the Iceborne review has gotten really good ratings, it's actually probably representing really large amounts of people. And so I actually think a lot of people have shifted away from the bow, even if the bow, based on the older stats, based on the older playtime of the bow from the base game, is still relatively high. But we want to see if that's going to be a trend. Will the bow move from 6th place to 8th place? Will the usage go down from 11% to 10%? So that's really the kind of stuff that you know, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, you have to pay close attention to, and that's what we're doing here. So the other weapon that we see shifting upward is the greatsword, and the greatsword is doing fine. Nothing's really changed too much about the greatsword, and is a very easy weapon to use in the campaign, in my opinion. You can build it, it's very reliable, it doesn't require endgame skills necessarily. And what do you see? You see the population of the greatsword move from 10% to 11%, all the way up into 4th place. Big move for so big drop for the bow, big movement upward for the greatsword. Not surprised. Hammer stays the same, switch axe stays the same, sword and shield is still at 4, heavy bowgun still at 3, light bowgun at 3, gun lance at 2%. So gun lance didn't move up. Hunting horn at 1% of the population in 13th place, and in last place even today is the lance at 1%. This is really why I feel like the lance needs some kind of help, some kind of love. Give us a little more than the counterclaw. I don't know what, but maybe, allow the counterclaw to work on every move, not just physical moves. Something. Throw us a heavy bone. All right, and last but certainly not least, we have the PC popularity for weapons in September. So starting in 1st place, we can see that the longsword somehow went up in popularity. It's now at 19%, which is nuts. That basically means 1 in 5 players are using the longsword. The longsword's OP. Actually, they nerfed it really appropriately. I think it feels great, but that's the thing. It just looks and feels great. That's not always true for all the other weapons. I would say sometimes the other weapons feel like clunky, or like there's this small thing you would change about it, or maybe they just need a little more razzle-dazzle in the moveset so that the moveset's maybe a bit more interactive, or maybe a little less repetitive, one of those things, right? So longsword moving up the ladder, 19%, bow holding still at 15%, greatsword has shifted downward to 4th place with 9% of the population, and charge blade kind of taking its place, a little reversal, that's not surprising at all. Dual blaze at 9%, insect glaive 7%, heavy bowgun 7%, hammer at 5%, light bowgun 5%, switch axe 4%, looks like the rest of it's just about constant, yeah. Sword and shield at 3%, lance at 3%, gun lance at 3%, and hunting horn at 1%. We don't really expect the weapon popularity for the weapons on the PC to change much because the Iceborne changes haven't arrived, and so PC players are playing in the old Kulvtaroth weapon meta. Can you believe it? Kulvtaroth, she's still around. What do you guys think we're going to get for Kulvtaroth in the future? You think she's still around the corner? Hopefully she is. I want to beat her up. Anyways, that's going to be all of the stats compared against themselves for the same console. Why don't we go ahead and take a look at the stats compared across consoles. Alright, so here we go. In 1st place on the PlayStation 4, Xbox, and PC, they do share one thing in common. Everyone chooses the longsword. The longsword is the least popular on the Xbox, though. That's interesting. Then we see on the PlayStation and the PC, the bow is holding strong in 2nd place. However, on the Xbox, we apparently love the insect glaive, with insect glaive in the 2nd place. In third place, it starts to deviate quite a bit. Greatsword is most popular in third place on PlayStation. On Xbox, it's going to be Dual Blades. And on PC, it's going to be the Charge Blade. So this is kind of where they all start to jumble up. In fourth place on the PlayStation, Charge Blade at 9%. Fourth place on Xbox, Greatsword. Fourth place on the PC is Greatsword. In fifth place on the PlayStation are the Dual Blades. So the Dual Blades coming down much lower on the PlayStation compared to the Xbox. Fifth place is Charge Blade on the Xbox, and fifth place is Dual Blades on the PC. Now in sixth place, we have Insect Glaive for PlayStation. Bow for the Xbox. Bow falling way further down on the Xbox. It's almost a reversal of the two, right? So like Insect Glaive on PC and PlayStation, Bow on Xbox. So they just kind of reverse places, kind of interesting. Rank number 7, we have a light bowgun on the PlayStation 4. They love their light bowgun for some reason. On the Xbox, we have the hammer, Oonga Boonga Boys. And on the PC, we have the heavy bowgun. So kind of like light bowgun, heavy bowgun, PC and PlayStation are close, but a little bit different from each other. And maybe that was affected actually by some of the changes recently. Remember, PlayStation has Iceborne, PC does not. So PC still has full cluster bomb. In 8th place, heavy bowgun on the PlayStation, switch axe on the Xbox. We still don't see either of the bowguns. And then on the PC, you have the hammer. In 9th place comes the hammer on PlayStation. Hammer kind of just floats in that spot all the time, doesn't it? In the Xbox, we have the sword and shield. Sword and shield actually coming above the bowgun. It's really interesting. And PC, we have the light bowgun, finally. Then in 10th place on the PlayStation, we're going to have the switch axe. So switch axe boys falling much lower down on the PlayStation list as opposed to the Xbox box list. We have the heavy bowgun on the Xbox, finally. And then on the PC, we do have the switch axe as well. For rank 11, we're really far down the list now. For rank 11, we have gun lance for the PlayStation with only 4% of the population. On the Xbox, it's going to be light bowgun. Wow, so really less than half the number of light bowgun players on the Xbox. Some really different players between these two different consoles. So light bowgun in 11th place. And then on the PC, we have the sword and shield. In 12th place on the PlayStation, we have the sword and shield. Apparently you guys don't like sword and shield quite as much. 12th place is the gun lance on the Xbox. They apparently don't like guns very much. And PC has the lance. PlayStation popularity, you kind of get a sense of where everything's going at this point. So the lance actually ranks the highest on the PC. That's interesting to note. It was in 12th place. We just looked at it. In 13th place, we have the lance on PlayStation. 13th place is hunting horn for the Xbox. And 13th place on the PC is the gun lance. You guys don't like the gun lance as much. Finally, in last place, PlayStation's going to be hunting horn with the 2% of the population at least. On the Xbox, players really don't like the lance, coming in last place at 1%. And then PC popularity will have 14th place going to the hunting horn, just like the PlayStation 4. However, you guys only have 1% of the population using it. Of course, on the PC, they have not received those hunting horn buffs, so we don't expect it to score very well on the PC. And that concludes all of the weapon popularity for September. Look forward to another one of these videos in roughly 2 months. I've been following this since the game came out and is one of my favorite videos to produce. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.